So we've established don't backtrack. And then the other major negative on the wife's experts reporting was the comparables. If you're going to compare businesses, you have to show what you're doing is apples to apples. And so he used this broad definition of a mill. And there are many mills in North Carolina, but they don't make the same things. And so the court pointed out that he didn't show that it was actually comparable based on what you would have to look at. And so if you're using comparables, and like you were saying, you have a method for comparables, make sure you can back up your comparables, what you were actually comparing.
Yeah, and this kind of goes back to how everybody says, well, you need to value it in the three ways, right? Income approach, asset approach, and market approach. That's actually not true. You need to consider all three methods and then show why you chose one or two or three of the methods in general. And a lot of people will even put, like an asset approach or let's go with an income approach. They'll be like, well, I did a future earnings and a past earnings, and then I even combine those or average those. That's not really theoretically how you're supposed to look at it. You're supposed to consider these approaches, consider one methodology under each approach, and then say, okay, what do I determine the value is? That's why I think pulling up transactions is always, like, we usually do an income approach, which is, cash is king. What is the cash flow to this company? Then you go over and you say, well, other businesses have sold like this, and it proves up the income approach. You would also use the internal transaction and say, it proves up the internal transaction, because I don't know if they even correlated it back to the internal transaction, but the expert that valued it using the comparative sales said it was like worth 1.8 million, which kind of backs into the value of the 25%, close to the 400,000 or a little bit more than the 400,000.
Well, one thing he did wrong, he divided by 4.
Yeah.
And so to get to the 25% interest, averaging those kinds of things are definitely risky. And so he came up with that valuation, that total value, and merely divided by 4. And that was rejected. That was rejected by the trial court. And then you have to look at the standard of review on appeal. If you win at the trial level, you have a massive advantage on appeal, because it's not whether the appellate court would do the same thing. It's whether the trial court showed an abuse of discretion, which is really difficult to prove. Now, in South Carolina, they describe it, the standard, as de novo with deference to the trial court. And that technically is not the definition of de novo. De novo means no deference, but de novo as an appellate standard of review is for questions of law. And of course, this included more than just law. There was deference to the trial court, and any deference to the trial court means you need to be credible at the trial level. Put all of your effort into your pre-trial business valuation, get that button down, because that's the court you need to convince. Once you try to appeal, it's anything that's discretionary, the trial courts will be affirmed. And so here we had the experts. So we've covered the court critiques of the wife's expert. His comparables weren't comparable. He valued the entire business and then divided by 4, and then the backtracking on the marketability discount. And so the husband's expert, and under the income approach, the initial 25% interest. So the husband's expert valued the 25% interest at $116,000. Now remember, he paid his sister $400,000 for that interest. So the 25% interest was valued at $116,000, and then the marketability discount was applied at 35%, because this was a privately held company with a stock restriction, a really strict stock restriction. And so the stock transfer restriction can only sell to the business itself, other shareholders, or immediate family. Severely restricted the pool of potential buyers, and with fewer potential buyers, the buyers have leverage in negotiating. So that is what supported the husband's expert with these discounts. And that is how the 25% share to the wife, was her half share of 25% ownership, was $75,000 instead of $200,000.